grow up. So that's the body condition score sheet I was talking about that's available on FutureBeef. So yeah, it's just a 2-page PDF that you can download. So it's got Brahman and Droughty available there. I know a few guys, they'll print that off, laminate it, keep it down in the yard, so they've got it there nice and handy. So yeah, it's just available through the FutureBeef website. All right. Now I'm going to talk about pastures because, like Jane, I get very excited talking about pastures. That is, I will talk about it until the cows come home, pun intended. So as if Robin isn't busy enough with all her other PDF sites, she's got 2 for me under the program that I work under. So I'm just going to talk about the 2 demonstration sites Robin has under the Queensland Pasture Resilience Program and how that sort of links into one of the key, I think, messages that's come out of today about how the most important part about heifer management and just livestock production as a whole is we've got to have the pasture there to maintain and improve that livestock. So the Queensland Pasture Resilience Program, so it's a statewide program with the focus of improving land condition across the state and addressing land condition decline. So it's a co-funded project, so we're 50% funded by MLA and then federal and state government. And the program is broken up into 4 main projects. You can see up there, that's our footprint, so the areas that we cover. And the 2 projects I'm going to talk about today is the CQ Pasture Resilience Program and the Improving Grazing Land Management Project. And they're also the North Queensland Pasture Resilience Program and the Southern Queensland Pasture Resilience Program as well. So I'll start with the Improving Grazing Land Management Project just to sort of set the scene a little bit going into the happy paddock. So the key sort of aims of the IGLM project, so it's made up of 2 parts, I should say. So it's the continuing of the Wambiana Grazing Trial, which is a long-term grazing trial that's been going to about 1997, just up at Charters Towers. So it's continuing to assess those grazing strategies as well as trialling some new sort of adaptive multi-paddock grazing concepts, trying to see if we can accelerate land condition recovery through different grazing strategies. So that's ticking away up there. And the other is to increase adoption of better grazing management practices across the state. And we're doing that through a number of on-farm demonstration sites. So Robin is one of those sites. And there's 10 demonstration sites across the state. And if you sort of draw a line sort of straight across here, I handle 2/3 of the state. How I ended up with most of those demo sites and the North team's only got 3, I don't know. It's pretty unfair if you ask me. So each of those sites were chosen. They're graziers that are doing some form of good grazing land management. So whether that's matching stocking rate to carrying capacity, wet season spelling, some rotational grazing. I've got a few guys sort of trialling a few different exciting things through there. So the demonstration at Stratford. So it's conservative stocking around the long-term carrying capacity with adaptive wet season spelling applied every 3 to 4 years. And so the demo at Stratford, we're actually pretty lucky that the original project leader was able to go back and revisit some old monitoring sites from the Desert Uplands long-term carrying capacity project that ran from 2003 to 2005. So I was able to revisit all of those monitoring sites across Stratford back in 2023. And sort of over that 20 years, Robin was able, through learnings from that project, take some areas that were, as you can see here, from B condition to A condition land, as well as some other areas that went from C to B, or maintain land condition throughout, while also increasing, I think it was from 600 AEs to about 1,000 AE carrying capacity, all while improving or maintaining land condition at the same time, which is really fantastic and a nod to Robin's management. And I guess that sort of leads into how can we improve production, and I can sort of hear everyone thinking, well, that's taken 20 years, Dana. We sort of want to accelerate that process a little bit. We're trying to adjust these heifer management tomorrow as opposed to 20 years' time. And Neil's also considering all the extra fencing that he would have to do as well. So that leads into the demonstration site that we have under the CQ Pasture Resilience Program. So the key objectives for that project is We're testing and demonstrating some new shrubby stylo varieties that have come out of some legacy work down in South Queensland, continuing a lot of the dieback research around the region, as well as doing some benefit cost analysis to legume and pasture improvements in grazing systems, as well as a bit of work in some phosphorus trials as well. So the demonstration at Stratford, so it's a pasture establishment trial using different soil preparation techniques to establish legumes or pastures into a paddock. And we're also using methods that are achievable in the region, so using machinery that's readily accessible and treatments that are actually going to be relevant to the region. And we're measuring the success of that establishment to try and do a bit of a benefit cost analysis there. So that little video is the trial site back in February when it was planted. So it was planted into some pretty hot and dry conditions. I was conveniently on holiday at the time. Definitely didn't plan that out. So we've got our trial site there. So we've got 5 treatments replicated twice. And then we've done those treatments again with fertilizer application based on the soil test that was done back in November 2023. So we've got a control where we've basically just done nothing, left it alone. One treatment was just broadcasted legume just onto the soil surface, so no preparation. A Roundup treatment, so we've sprayed out the grass competition and then seeded straight in after that, just broadcasting on top. And then 2 treatments where we've gone in with a Yeomans plough, ripped it once and broadcasted afterwards. So one was done with just a legume only mix and then another with a buffel and legume mix. So our legume mix was a mixture of shrubby stylo varieties, so that's your Seca and Cyran, as well as Katinga varieties, and then again to buffel in that buffel and legume treatment. So that's what the trial site looked like in April. No, so no desmanthus for this one. We sort of just went with what legumes we knew were sort of most likely to successfully grow. And I think it was also just, based on what seed we could get at the time as well. So yeah, you can see the trial site. So you can see these couple of treatments here. So your two Yeomans and your sprays, you can definitely see where that competition's been addressed. You can also see where Stu wasn't driving very straight with the spray rig either. Again, I wasn't here for this. So I also call this trial the I told Stu so trial because he was pretty dubious that this was actually going to work. I told him no, I could feel it in my pasture agronomist bones that this trial was going to work. I went out in April 2025 this year and found a bunch of little baby stylos growing, and I was very happy. Took some photos, texted Stu and said, I told you so. So yeah, we can see we've got, thankfully, despite going into some pretty hot and dry conditions, a lovely 5 inches across a week in March and then a couple extra inches to follow up, and was able to get some germinating rain out of that. And then in June this year, I roped in a few ring-ins from the Longreach team and Sammy as well from Barkey and doing some pasture counts for me. So yeah, we can see how those stylos have sort of grown over a couple of months. And my very handy stylo measurement tool, which just happened to be the lip balm that was in my pocket at the time. And you can see sort of down in this one, so we're using quadrats and doing plant counts, just the number of seedlings in those quadrats. And you can see a couple of buffel seedlings in there as well. So yeah, predominantly Seca variety, or the shrubby stylo varieties that came up, but that was mainly just to do with the 85% seeding rate. So we worked that out to an average of plants per square metre based on each treatment. And you can see that everywhere where we did sow legumes, we did get some form of establishment, but obviously where we have addressed that competition, so whether that's through that Yeomans rip or herbicide, we've gotten significantly better establishment so far. So the sort of general rule of thumb for a good establishment is 5 mature plants per square metre. So even with this no preparation, just broadcasting legumes, we've got that at the moment with our establishment counts, but that's provided those plants are actually able to survive through the winter and set seed and then sort of repopulate from there. So at the moment, we haven't seen any difference between treatments with and without fertiliser, but that's always something that we might see sort of going into coming seasons. And I have not been out to the trial plot since we did this, so I'm really hoping Robin's going to send me some photos and tell me it's still alive. Yeah. Broadcast it. I was going to say, Neil can tell you all about the broadcasting. Yeah, no, it just goes to show that sort of little bit of soil disturbance. And when we think about sort of even some of these legumes and grass seeds, they are very, very, very tiny. And you sort of think about planting depth, that you sort of don't want to go any deeper than 3 times the width of that seed. So if that seed's buried, you know, even just an inch below the soil, it's going to really, really struggle without a good amount of moisture and some energy to get up and germinate. But by breaking up that soil a little bit and sort of getting some air into it, you sort of bring those seeds to the top, and just even through just ripping some country or just whatever's in the seed bank, you'll get a little bit more of a response out of that. Yes, been fenced off, courtesy of Neil. So, no, so no stock on it at the moment. So, yeah. Yeah, obviously just given the bit of the later season and that sort of later start, we're just going to give these sort of sites probably another wet season just to kick off and keep going, just allow them to set seed and all that sort of stuff. But had we got that sort of earlier season, or even some of those treatments, like this was done with like no fallow, so there was no stored moisture, so pretty dry conditions. So yeah, had there been that sort of earlier rain back in February or sort of fallow, we potentially, yeah, could have had enough growth that they could have been grazed this year. But yeah, obviously just given how the season's fallen, yeah, we'll just give these little babies another season to, yeah, get a bit of vigour about them. So the next burning question is, well, how do we sort of practically apply this in the desert uplands region? So first things first would be choosing species that are adapted to the climate and soil type. So a pretty handy resource is the Stylos in Queensland guide. Most sort of adapted variety for this area is your shrubby stylo variety, so your Sector and Cyran. Can get Katinga out this way, but probably not as tropically, not sort of as adapted to this area. And then we have a couple of options as opposed to sort of going with that broad scale whole property or whole paddock approach that's sort of targeted, addressing, investing a little bit more money into smaller areas and sort of getting that little bit quicker return on investment. So through production paddocks, which is a term that's been coined by the North Queensland team, but what Robin calls a happy paddock, or alternatively planting in strips, which they've done a fair bit of work in the north in those. So a couple of examples there. So like from your production paddock point of view, so doing that sort of, if you've got some lovely open clear country where you can get in some machinery, you can sort of do that full seed bed approach, or alternatively, if you have got a bit of timbered country, planting in strips in between trees. Yeah, so whether it's sort of fully spraying out like these ones up here, or you can just go in with a ripper, just wherever you can sort of get that machinery access. And yeah, getting legumes into those systems. And you can see sort of just by reducing that competition, you get a lot better sort of establishment. You can see some nice little stylos. I think it's a bit of butterfly pea that they've planted up north. So it's at the moment, so we've had some pretty promising establishment on that site so far. But yeah, hopefully we'll be able to get it out there shortly and see how it's fared through the winter. So if you want to hear any more about the Queensland Pasture Resilience Program, we have a quarterly newsletter. So we won't promise we won't spam your inbox. But there's a lot of articles about any of the demonstration sites, as well as some other work that's happening, not only the 2 projects that I'm in, but the other projects as well. So yeah, you can sort of follow along there. There's also an article that was published earlier this year about the IGLM demo site at Stratford, touching a little bit more on that desert uplands long-term carrying capacity project. But yeah, happy to take any questions on that one. I think just it's sort of come up a couple of times today, just around obviously last year with the protein drought. Like we had a fantastic season. There was plenty of grass, but there was no protein available. Legumes are a really great way to get protein into a pasture and address that protein drought. And also they cycle nitrogen, which will then kick off your organic matter and increase the productivity of your pastures as well. So if you have the opportunity to introduce some legumes, multiple benefits to be had there. Not really at the moment. No, I think Kate and Jeff Urquhart up at Adelong, so north of Aramac, they've like put in some contour banks and seeded into those with some desmanthus. And last I spoke to Kate a couple of months ago, that's going gangbusters up there. So it'll grow at Aramac, probably grow in a few other places too. Yeah. Yeah, I guess a lot of the limitation or the reluctance for people with legumes out this way is the sort of average annual rainfall figures. You talk to blokes like Ross Newman who did that work with Kate and Jeff, and it was more so going less so off the rainfall, more so off the soil's ability to hold moisture. And these lighter soils take significantly less rainfall to kick off and get some growth. So instead of being able to sort of store that moisture in a sort of more of a fallow concept instead of relying on rainfall, so being able to store that moisture, you can sort of address that. We don't have the... Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Now I'm going to move this on if we're all happy where we're at in relation to this. So you're available to, you could talk to people who might be involved in the matter of photos or anyone else, I imagine.
Yes, I'm sure I'll be making a few more appearances. And yeah, thank you to Robin for letting me hijack a little session of this, because we were supposed to have a Neighbour Day at Stratford back in April, but I think due to some weather forecasts and people being away and things were all cancelled. So, but yeah, we'll be holding a few extension-y Neighbour Day, field day type things at Stratford in future. And yeah, obviously trying to collaborate where we can with the Paddocks project. So probably won't be the last you see of me talking about grass.